Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Rita Koutsidimos, and I'm the Executive Director of the BC Alliance for Healthy Living. And we're so pleased, that you're joining us today. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this webinar is being broadcast from the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, where we have the privilege to live and work and play. And in my case, I'm coming from the Squamish Nation and the neighboring Sechelt Nation, where I have the privilege to raise my family as well, and very grateful for the stewards of these lands. So we are here today to discuss a novel way to address food insecurity in some of our communities through mobile produce markets. And healthy eating and food security have been priorities for BCHL, for the BC Alliance for Healthy Living, since our earliest days as an organization. And that is, of course, because eating enough fruits and vegetables is a very strong protective factor against the risk for chronic disease. So I'll just say that BCHL conducted some public opinion research in 2021. We were trying to understand some of the impacts of the pandemic and how that was affecting eating patterns. Well, we had expected to see a rise in food insecurity, but we were absolutely shocked when the polling results came back as showing that 93% of British Columbians were not getting an adequate amount, the recommended daily amount of fruits and vegetables. And unfortunately, many people are not getting enough produce in their diets, and of course for a variety of reasons. And some of those reasons are high food costs, living far away from grocery stores or in areas where there's not enough local markets. And then in some northern communities, the grocery stores simply don't have a wide enough selection of affordable, healthy choices that meet the needs of the local people and the food preferences. So mobile produce markets offer us a way to solve some of those access issues. And the markets are very adaptable. They can travel to neighborhoods with limited choices and offer affordable, healthy foods to consumers where they live. So we have an excellent program lined up for you today, and but before we hear from our two speakers, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you're having trouble hearing, just try turning up the volume on your phone or computer. That's how this system works. And we really want your input today. So we'll be asking you to use the control panel on the right-hand corner of the screen and type in your questions for your speakers as you think of them. And then we'll have a question period after each speaker, and we'll direct those questions to the appropriate speaker. And then after both the presentations, we'll have a final round of question and answer. We are going to participate in a few polls. So you'll see a blue screen come up, then just answer plug in the answer that is the best fit for you. And then we'll answer as many questions as we can. But if we can't get to them all, we will make sure that we have a follow-up email with some of those responses. So now let me frame our program for you today. So as I mentioned before, in June 2021, we surveyed British Columbians to understand how the pandemic has impacted their health and well-being. And we found that British Columbians had changed their eating habits. Notably, more people were eating homemade meals, but more people were also eating highly processed snack foods. And while many were eating homemade meals, most were not eating enough fruits and vegetables, as I mentioned before. So a third of the people that we surveyed reported that they could not afford healthy food. And 64% of Indigenous respondents reported difficulty affording healthy food. And over half of those that we surveyed in the lowest income group also said that healthy food was unaffordable. So food insecurity is a major problem in British Columbia. And as many of us know, fruits and vegetables do protect against the risk for chronic disease. They help us feel better. They are health promoting and give us the energy that we need to lead an active life. And of course, when we've got more people leading healthier lives, it does reduce pressures on the healthcare system, which at this time is so very, very stretched. So our two speakers will discuss their experiences today providing mobile produce markets in two very different settings, in an under-resourced urban area and in a rural area. So our first speaker, Pamela Hess from the Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, serves the Washington, D.C. area and selling affordably priced, high-quality fresh fruit in neighborhoods that do not have regular access to healthy food. Our second speaker, Zoe Levitt, is from the Nourish and Develop Foundation, and they have a refrigerated van that travels and sets up in various locations in and around the Brock Township in Ontario. They offer fresh produce, meal kits, and prepared meals at affordable prices. We'll hear why these projects are important, how they're working, and we hope that this will spark some thinking on whether a similar model might work in BC. So that's an overview of what you can expect to hear in the next hour. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Pamela Hess. Pamela is the Executive Director of Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating more equitable, sustainable food system in the Washington, D.C. area. Pam came to Arcadia after a career as a national security journalist, working with the Associated Press and United Press International, but has always had a love for food and sustainable farms. As the Executive Director for Arcadia, she brings together a large and expanding network of farmers and food advocates. So I want to thank you for joining us today, Pam. We're excited to learn about Arcadia's experience with mobile markets, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. And my apologies all for not being on screen. We had some technical challenges, and I'm really delighted to be able to join you. And I'll give you a heads up. I'm going to spend some of my time trying to talk you out of doing mobile markets. They are phenomenal at certain things. They are also expensive. And a lot of people fall in love with the novelty of the model without thinking through all of the additional costs and headaches of it. There are certain cases where it really works, and our case is one of those. But what I just caution you to do is think through it completely. And I'll give you some of those pros and cons towards the end of this. But the first thing I want to say is that I come to this work with sort of a strange background. As Rita mentioned, I was a national security journalist. That means that I covered the Pentagon, I covered the CIA, and I covered the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in particular. I spent a fair amount of time what the military calls downrange, and that became my frame of reference. And I visited a bunch of injured folks at Walter Reed, friends that I made overseas or friends of friends that people asked me to check in on. And Walter Reed is the main hospital here in DC for war wounded. The signature injury of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan is a lower limb amputation. It's the signature visible injury anyway. And that's because the insurgents, the enemy over there was using improvised explosive devices that tended to be on the ground and would blow from the ground up. So if you went over them in a Humvee, it's likely that your foot or your leg would be injured. And so a lower limb amputation is a fairly visible injury from those wars. When I joined Arcadia in 2013 and I went out on our mobile markets, I saw a whole lot of people missing lower limbs in wheelchairs or on crutches. And they were about the right age to be war veterans. And I asked my staff, wow, are these folks war veterans? There's an awful lot of them. And they said, no, this is diabetes. Because I come from a background in journalism, I always want to sort of check my assumptions. And I was sort of shocked by that, by the large number that I saw. So I went and I did some research. And in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which lasted for almost 20 years, there were about 2,000 amputations as a result of war injuries. In the United States, in any given year, so we just talked about 2,000 over 20 years with a very determined enemy. In any given year, there are 70,000 diabetic amputations. So we do this to ourselves, and it's because we can't be bothered to fix a food system, to create a food system where everybody has easy, convenient access to food that they really want to eat because it looks good, it tastes good, because it's culturally relevant, and because it's at hand. I live in a neighborhood in Washington, D.C. It's called Ward 6. There are 8 wards in the city. And I have 13 full-service grocery stores in my neighborhood for about 88,000 people. Just across the Anacostia River is Ward 8. It has about 80,000 people, and there is one grocery store. And so if you're lucky enough to live near that grocery store, you can buy the food that you need, provided you have those resources, and you can manage your own health, right? And if you make bad decisions, then you can go to the doctor and get a Lipitor and sort of get on with it. But there are vast swaths of the city that don't have access to grocery stores. And so folks are really limited because A, they don't have cars to go somewhere else. B, they don't have a lot of money. Many of them are using government nutrition benefits called SNAP in the United States. And C, there's not a grocery store that they can walk to, if even they can walk, because there are like lots of folks with chronic diseases that really impair their mobility. And those chronic diseases are, as you know, directly related to the food that they have regular, affordable, and convenient access to. So I'm going to switch over to telling you a little bit about the organization and why we were created and what we do and how we do it. And then I'll focus on the mobile markets. But this beautiful slide is actually a picture from our cookbook that we give out on our mobile market to encourage people to cook with the fresh fruits and vegetables and even proteins that we sell on the mobile market. So next slide, please. Someone else is controlling this. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll move on. The next slide that you'll see is a picture of our home base. We are actually, we have a farm about 10 or 15 miles south of Washington, D.C. We're on a historic property. It's called Woodlawn. And our mission is to cultivate vibrant local food systems that prioritize health, equity, and sustainability from the farm forward. So we grow food on our farm. And we use our farm as a campus to train military veterans to be farmers. I'm not sure what the situation is in Canada. I suspect it's similar, but in the United States, the average age of the, I'm on slide 6 by now, the average age of the farmer is about 60 years old. So in the next 20 years, we're going to see a massive wave of farmers retiring. In the United States, that number is 700,000. We are going to need 700,000 farmers to join farming in the next 20 years. We have identified that military veterans, partly because of my background, and partly because we are surrounded on 3 sides by a military base, we have determined that military veterans make excellent farmers if they have appropriate training and encouragement, and so that's what we do on our farm. So we use our farm. Could you please go forward to slide 6, please? We use our farm to grow food. But then also we use.
My apologies. I'm trying to advance the slides and they're not moving. I'll try.
No worries. I'll just keep rolling through. So we grow food on our farm. We've got about 4 acres under cultivation on this total 126-acre historic property that once belonged to George Washington. And we use that farm as a campus to train military veterans to become farmers. We've trained 148 so far. More than 70 now have their own farms on our farming, so we're pretty proud of that outcome. We also use the farm as a campus for school children, for field trips, and for farm camps, and increasingly for other folks in the neighborhood who want to learn how to farm or want to sort of meet vegetables where they're grown. And we have incredible outcomes with kids, as you all probably know. If a child helps grow something or harvests it, and gets to sort of interact with it and get to know it away from the dinner table, they're much more likely to eat it when they sit down. So our field trips and our farm camps have, again, tremendous outcomes with kids wanting to eat more fruits and vegetables. And then the final piece of this is our healthy food access, our mobile markets, and that's what we've gathered here today to talk about. Could you go to the next slide, please? There's a virtuous cycle in the way that we approach our mission. We try to have a holistic approach to the food system. So it begins on the farm with us adding to the supply of fresh, healthy food, and then adding to the number of farmers so that we build up that supply so that there's more for everybody. And then we build up demand with our on-farm and in-school programs. So kids really, really want those fruits and vegetables. So they eat them at school or they eat them on the farm, and then they go home and they tell their parents they want beets and carrots. And that hasn't changed a thing unless you also make it possible for the parents to buy beets and carrots and know how to cook them and know what to do with them and want to buy them. So that's the work that we do. We take a holistic and circular approach to the food system and try to create supply, build demand, and then meet that demand where we can. So next slide, please. You'll see in the next slide when it comes up our original mobile market. We've since moved away from this model, but the mobile market started in 2012 in Washington, D.C.'s low food access neighborhoods, particularly Ward 7 and Ward 8, which I mentioned earlier. These are neighborhoods that with 170,000 people in them only have 3, and I think it's going down to 2 grocery stores. So folks are really limited in what they can eat. And I'll tell you this is a fact, that regardless of income, people will not walk more than a half of a mile to get food. In Washington, D.C., you are 14 times closer at any single moment to what researchers call fringe food, which is food that's not healthy, food that's overly processed, food that's not good for you, versus mainstream food, that is the foods that you can get at a farmer's market or in a grocery store. So that's what you're looking at now is our original mobile market. So in 2012, we threw this bus out, just one, out on the street and started selling vegetables. We changed the inside, we pulled out the seats and we put in chest freezers, and then we tricked them with a pretty commonly known trick to turn into refrigerators so that they wouldn't freeze. They would just stay at about 40 degrees. We filled that with fruits and vegetables, and we went out and started selling it. And we had no idea what we were doing, but sold about $44,000 worth of food and thought we were doing pretty well. So the next year we did it again. Our season lasts from May until November. That's our local growing season. And we only sell food that is grown locally and seasonally. So we start in May and we end in November. And our markets are entirely outdoors. So what we'll do is we'll pull up in this bus, we'll hop out, we'll set up tents, we'll hang some racks on the side of the vehicle, we'll put out crates and crates of vegetables and fruits. We also carry meats that are frozen, and we carry eggs, and folks can come up and buy them. So the first year we sold $44,000 and thought we were doing pretty well. The next year, with no advertising whatsoever, just word of mouth, we sold $66,000 worth of food. And that was a 50% increase. It's still not much, but it's pretty amazing. The following year, we sold $135,000, and then $180,000, and then $205,000, and $35,000, and $256,000. So every year we see these double-digit increases. And again, we have no marketing budget. This is all word of mouth. This is when you make the food affordable and available, and it's really high quality. People show up for it and they tell their neighbors. Could you go on to the next screen, please? The next screen that you'll see come up is, I think it is, shows you where the grocery stores are in Washington, which I talked about right at the top of this, and that Washington, D.C., our particular flavor of structural racism is really about the black and white divide in the United States. And the dark blue areas you'll see are predominantly African American and show, as you can see from these little gray dots, show where the grocery stores are. And this is a couple of years old, and I think one of these grocery stores has already shut down. So this shows how much more difficult it is to get fresh, healthy food and therefore regulate your own health in these neighborhoods versus the wealthier, whiter neighborhoods in Washington. Could you move on to the next slide? The next slide that you'll see shows where we locate our mobile markets. And so if you sort of visually overlay these two maps, you'll see why we are where we are. We go to a place that doesn't have a grocery store within a mile, where there's low car ownership and where there's high use of food stamps or EBT. And then we accept and we double those food stamps. So if you come to us with $10 on your food stamps or EBT card, your electronic benefits card, you will walk away with $20 of the finest quality food that you can get anywhere. So folks know that they can come to us for really great quality food and great quality service. And we are there every week. Rain, thunderstorms, we show up at the same time, same place, because part of being this food access point is being reliable and predictable. During the pandemic, especially in the early days, we were going to places every other week because we had to put all of our staff on each market because at that point we still didn't really know what we were dealing with from a public health perspective. And we found that by not being there every week, it really depressed customer turnout, because I think customers just had a hard time tracking which week it is. So low-income customers, it turns out, are just like everyone else. They're looking for value, they're looking for convenience, they're looking for predictability and great customer service. So the next slide is something that I'm really proud of, and that is this, is that since 2012, when grocery stores told us nobody wanted the food that we were selling in the neighborhoods we were selling it, and that's why they wouldn't serve those neighborhoods, is because there was no demand. We have sold almost $2 million worth of food at very low prices, or lower than retail prices. So I think if you translated the amount of food that we have sold since 2012 in neighborhoods where grocery stores told us there was no demand, it's probably closer to $2.5 million. And we're just scratching the surface. We are only in 8 locations 1 day a week, and we're only operating May to November. There is demand for this food, but you have to have it be affordable and convenient, and it has to be really high quality. One of the things we hear from our customers a great deal is that they shop with us rather than going across town to the grocery store because our food is better. And there is this prevailing and hopefully changing idea, particularly in food philanthropy, that if you have a low-income neighborhood, you should just give them all the good food that's left over. It might be bruised, it might not look that good, but beggars can't be choosers. And what we found is that if you want people to eat healthy food, that healthy food needs to be really appealing and it needs to be high quality. If we wouldn't eat the food that we're selling, nobody else is going to eat it. So we therefore have really, really high quality food. And what I would suggest is that it's wealthy people who have more access who should be the ones buying and eating the seconds and going to stores, the misfit stores, et cetera. We have a public health crisis, and the best way to solve it is by making sure that people have really good quality food that they want to eat, and that means first quality. Move on if we can. Well, we can skip the next slide. It's basically, it says that, we promote customer dignity. One of the reasons that I think our mobile markets are successful is because we actually charge for the food. Our customers do have resources, however limited, but they want to spend it and they want to be part of a joyful market transaction. Lots of the people that we serve are accustomed to bread lines, standing, waiting in line for whatever food is going to be handed out to them that they don't get to pick. But when they come to our market, they can pick what they want. And that means that they're eating the food that we give them, whereas we hear from them that the food that they end up taking home for free, they toss out half of it because they don't know what it is, they don't like it, their kids didn't eat it, and that food waste is a real crime. So one of the benefits of having a choice market like ours is that people pick what they want and what they really want to eat. So thank you. That's the slide that I was hoping to get to. So Arcadia's mobile markets do about $250,000 business every year, and that includes the value of the matching, the SNAP that I told you about. Farmers markets in Washington, D.C., which we are sort of considered one of, is very big business. They sell between 10 and 15 million worth of food every year, and we represent, $250,000 of that. That's less than 1% of that total. But we do 45% of all SNAP or food stamp business of farmers markets in Washington, D.C. And that's because we have wheels and we go to where the people really need us and want us. We locate our mobile markets in the same place every week, but outside of libraries or health clinics or doctor's offices or parks, places that people are going to be anyway, places that are convenient and places where folks actually want to go and convene. One of the other really nice things about mobile markets and farmers markets in general is the placemaking. It's a chance for neighbors to come together over something really healthy and fun and get to see each other and have spontaneous social interactions. So that's one of the reasons why they love coming out to our mobile market. Now I'm just going to go to the next slide if you can. Arcadia was intrinsic in the creation of an international, because it includes Canada and a few other places, mobile market network. There is a listserv for everybody who has a mobile market or wants to create a mobile market, and we all share lessons learned and hot tips, and we grouse about all the problems that having a mobile market has that other food access organizations don't have to contend with, like parking tickets and broken transmissions. There are, I believe now, at least the number that we've counted, 57 different mobile markets in the US and Canada. I think there might be 2 in Canada, and I believe that one of them is on the line here. So it is an answer, but again, I would say it's an answer to a very specific problem. And to my mind, that specific problem is geography, which is you live in a densely populated area or you live in a rural area and there is no grocery store close enough to you to easily get to. We've tried to do mobile market stops in suburban areas, and it hasn't worked for us. It might work for somebody else, but it hasn't worked for us. And we think that's because you need either to have lots of stops in places where people are spread far apart, or fewer stops in places where there's a high population density. In the suburbs, there's tons of grocery stores, at least in the United States, and people are living kind of far apart. So you would sort of have this suburban challenge of lots of competition from grocery stores, which can operate on economies of scale, and then also longer distances and not as pedestrian friendly sales situations. So for us, I think it works well in the city where there's dense population and low food access, or I think it works well in the rural areas where people are really stuck if they don't have a vehicle that can travel 15 or 20 miles to their nearest grocery store. The next slide, please. These are the, I believe that, I think that Canada might have 2 or even 3 mobile markets now. Just popped that in there for your location and so that you all can maybe reach out to some folks to get some more perspectives if this is something that you're thinking of. Can you skip forward to slide 17, please? This is the pros and cons of having a mobile market. So the pro, obviously, is it's flexible. If a location is not working out, you've got wheels and you can move, and it's dynamic as well. So you can, it's not like building a brick and mortar store, obviously. If that brick and mortar store is built and nobody comes, you're kind of stuck. But if you have a mobile market and nobody comes, you go find a new location, and we do that. We've moved between a number of locations, and we've kind of settled on the 8 areas that seem to be working out well. Usually every year we swap out one location if it's underperforming. The pros are the mobile markets are also, as I sort of mentioned at the top, they're kind of sexy and interesting, and you can use them to generate other kinds of revenue, like going to a corporate retreat or going, having it become a sponsored vehicle for a business park that is going to pay you a lot of money in order to come and set up one day, and then that allows you to go and serve other neighborhoods on other days. It's also a great blank slate for sponsorship, where people can wrap their vehicle and advertise a healthcare organization or similar. I have a colleague down in Phoenix that gets about $200,000 a year that helps her run her mobile market just by wrapping the vehicles. As I said, this is mobile markets are best in high density and low food access areas where poverty is the driving force, or in rural areas where transportation is a driving issue and distance from the grocery store. And the great thing about mobile markets is that they give customers agency and dignity and choice. There are a number of different kinds of mobile markets, and some of them are sort of mobile food pantries that just distribute food, and others are mobile markets that sell choice markets, and still others are sort of mobile CSA or pre-packed box pickups. So there's lots of different ways to do it, and certainly if you join the mobile market network, I will let you into it. You can ask folks about their different models. Now, here are the cons. The mobile markets are expensive because you don't just need the vehicle. You also need an aggregation space, a place where you are taking food in, storing it in coolers appropriately or in freezers as you need it. So there's rent that's associated with that. The vehicles obviously need to be maintained. They use gas. They require insurance. If somebody crashes into your vehicle, which has happened to us on a couple of occasions this year, you have to then get it fixed, and there are sort of associated costs with that. And certainly, we have an extra backup vehicle that we can use. That's our sourcing vehicle to sub in for it. But there's just sort of lots of logistical challenges. Depending on the vehicle you get, you might have to hire somebody who has a commercial driver's license, which can be a real limiting factor. That's one of the reasons we got rid of that big green school bus, which now serves as a storage shed on our farm. We now use Isuzu box trucks that are about 16 or 20 feet long. And as I said, you need your aggregation center with coolers and freezers and ice and parking for your vehicles as well. You also get parking tickets and you have to do frequent repairs. And mobile markets can also be weirdly regulated. We operate in a metropolitan area, so we cross over different state lines. And in one jurisdiction, we're a mobile grocery. In another jurisdiction, we're a food truck. In another jurisdiction, we're a farmer's market. So it's just sort of complex legally. So my suggestion to you is that if this is something that you want to do, get involved in the mobile market network and ask some hard questions. The real thing that you want to ask yourself is, what problem am I trying to solve? And get to the point where you know whether or not that solution requires wheels and all of the additional trouble of a mobile market. Sometimes it does, but I will tell you, and if you can go to the next slide, that I don't know of a single mobile market so far in our mobile market network that is actually self-sustaining or turning a profit just from food sales. All of us have outside income that helps support the markets themselves. This is a slide that I pulled from our annual summit, which will be happening next year in North Carolina, in the US, where we'll bring together these 60 or 70 mobile markets. And I just wanted to show you that the average week grocery sales across all the mobile markets who answered this survey are pretty low. The largest proportion are between $100 and $500 of weekly gross sales. So that's not a lot of income. That's 25% of all of the mobile markets who answered this. You'll see that more than $3,000 a week, that's only 5% of mobile markets. And that $3,000 doesn't even begin to touch our operational costs. So this is, it's not a money winner, it's a money loser. That said, if somebody was out there serving the needs of these folks, then we wouldn't have to be, but they're not. And so that's why we are, and we're a nonprofit. And so I take on the costs of serving this absolute need for fresh, healthy food in neighborhoods that are passed over by the private industry. And then I wanted to, the next slide, and this is my last slide, is just to point you to these resources. So our partners in the Mobile Market Summit and the Mobile Market Listserv is University of Buffalo, and they have a bunch of resources called myveggievan.org, where you just sign up and you can have access to all kinds of insider knowledge about mobile markets. And I'm also available to talk with you if you'd like to dive into it. But my recommendation is always to start here, sign up and get into these free resources and really start interrogating whether or not a mobile market is the right solution to your problem. So I'll leave it there, and thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Pamela, and thank you for just carrying on. I do want to apologize to everyone today. It seems that the GoToWebinar server keeps on coming in and coming out, which is, I believe, why we're having some problems with the presentation. But I will just say, Pamela, that was a wonderful presentation, and it's so very cool the way you're serving and the way you've mapped out those areas based on walking, based on SNAP, and socioeconomic, and then how you've built your market up over the years. It's really a very inspiring story. Now we are getting low on time here. The clock is ticking away. So I think what we'll do is we'll save our Q&A to the very end. And I'd just like to introduce our next speaker, Zoe Levitt. She is the Markets and Education Manager at the Nourish and Develop Foundation, based in Cannington, Ontario. And the Nourish and Develop Foundation's goal is to enhance local food security and promote self-reliance through collaborative programs and partnerships. And I'm just going to pass it over to you, Zoe. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks, Rita. Okay, so as Rita mentioned, I'm Zoe Levitt. If you want to skip ahead to the next slide, I'm just aware that this might be a little laggy. So our organization does many things. Similar to Pamela, we take a holistic approach to food security. So we have a shopping style food bank, a community kitchen, educational workshops, social supports, markets, women's services, a community garden, a seed library, and much, much more. So how our mobile food market fits into that, it's an extension of our food bank program, our kitchen program, education, social supports, and markets kind of all coming together. So we saw this program as being really advantageous in order to be an extension of that. Next slide, please. So what our mobile food market is, in a nutshell, it's a retrofitted refrigerated van towing a retrofitted cargo trailer, which acts as a market stand. We bring fresh, affordable local produce, prepared meals, meal kits, and value-added products directly to Brock Township community members. We've selected strategic locations around the community, and by using a regular schedule, we are a convenient, accessible, and reliable source of nutritious food options. The transitions of this slideshow are going to be missed given the lag. So if we can skip to slide 3, which is a photo of our van and trailer setup. So just kind of give you a visual of what that looks like. So I'll mention that the van we had pre-existing to starting the mobile food market. So we just sort of like built on that infrastructure, which is why we retrofitted it to become refrigerated. So that's it here. Oh, there it goes. Anyways, that's fine. So where did the idea come from? In part, it came from COVID-19 restrictions and an increase in demand. It came from community interest and research. We surveyed the community to see if a mobile market was something they were interested in. It was a desire to expand our service area. We are based in Cannington, Ontario, which is a small rural town of about 2,000 people. Like I mentioned, our organization acts to serve Brock Township in its entirety, which is 12,000. So being that we're based in Cannington, we wanted to expand our service, and the mobile market was a way that we could do that within a rural area. We had a satellite distribution model where we had fridges set up in some low-income housing units, but there was quite a few problems with this distribution model. So this was a way to have a more equitable model. And then of course, other mobile market projects. So Pam mentioned a few. There's actually quite a few in Canada. Toronto's Food Share Toronto has maybe one of the older ones that I'm aware of. There's also Fresh Roots in Edmonton and Alberta, and the Halifax Mobile Food Market. And the next slide, please. I just wanted to make mention, so Pamela mentioned the Veggie Van resource. Definitely, I'm part of that community. We're part of that community. I would highly recommend it. They have lots of great resources. In addition to that, Halifax Mobile Food Market has a free guide on how to start a mobile food market. This was an especially helpful tool in getting going. So it's like very honest information about how to get that going and what models they've tried and what has and hasn't worked. Again, Halifax being a city, it's maybe more specific to an urban setting, but still was very useful. So next slide, please, slide 6. So I just wanted to touch on what a food desert is, and Pamela touched on this. It's like industry vernacular that I just want to make sure everyone's aware of. So a food desert is an area that has limited access to affordable and nutritious food. So an example of that in our community is a town called Beaverton. It's about 3,000 people. Most of the population is based near the waterfront in the downtown area. There used to be a grocery store in the downtown. Now the only grocery store is up on the highway, which is several kilometers to get to. And there's no sidewalk to get to that grocery store. There's no public, well, there is public transit, but it's very limited. So in order to get to that grocery store, your options are limited. There's no taxi service in this area, being that we're a rural setting. And the prices at that grocery store are very high. We are near cottage country, so oftentimes the prices at that grocery store are quite expensive, which leaves those folks that are in downtown and don't have access to transportation, they're accessing convenience stores and dollar stores for like their most convenient food options, which of course are not always the healthiest or affordable. And just sort of interestingly, I didn't know this is sort of new to me, the antonym of a food desert is a food swamp. And these are areas where there's an abundance of fast food, junk food outlets, convenience stores, liquor stores that outnumber healthy food options. I can think of many places that look like this, and I just didn't know they had a name, so I thought I would share that. So on to slide 7, please. So again, Pamela really touched on this, but I'm gonna maybe repeat it, which is the common barriers to food access are transportation, affordability, convenience, mobility, stigma, it's a big one, food quantity, quality, and variety, food literacy. So maybe they don't know, like some folks don't know how to store food properly, how to prepare it, the value of certain nutritious foods. They have food preferences or quarantining. These are just some common examples of barriers. The 3 that I feel that we're addressing with this mobile food market in this rural setting are transportation. So as Pamela sort of mentioned, if you don't have a car and you live in a rural setting, your options for getting food are very limited. So this is the solution to that, is that we're going to those locations, to the areas where we know that there are folks that have those barriers. And again, making it convenient and making it affordable. So similarly, I wanted to share with everyone, because for those folks who are thinking of starting a mobile food market, I agree with many of Pamela's pros and cons. And I just wanted to kind of give an overview of what it took to get here. So in slide 8 is kind of an outline of what that took. So we needed to get approval from our board. We needed to source the funding. We needed to collaborate with our location partners and get those agreements signed. We needed to get approval from the municipality. We needed to get approval from public health, insurance. We needed to retrofit the van, purchase the trailer, retrofit the trailer, secure our food sources, so get our farms sorted out, like purchase our additional supplies and infrastructure that we needed, do all the branding, figure out the schedules. So it was a lot of surveying to figure out, and we're still figuring it out, the best times to be at each location. Of course, hiring staff, promoting, and then we've recently started doing carbon offsetting. So it's a lot of work to get from the idea to the getting on the road. I mean, no regrets, but just so everyone has a full understanding. So into slide 9, please. So just to give a sense of where funding came from, and this might be especially of interest to Canadians. So the majority of our funding came from the Local Food Infrastructure Fund, which is a federal grant provided by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So as I'm showing here, 76% of our funding for this came from them. We also got a large part of our funding from the Emergency Community Support Fund. So this was a community foundation, on a regional level. And then from the municipal level, we had a COVID-19 grant. And I just want to make mention, we ended up getting quite a lot of support from our community partners in order to secure, especially to secure the federal funding. So there was a lot of letters of support from community partners like our local health center, from township council, from our housing corporations that have units in this area, from farms, from the public schools, from a lot of different community partners. So having their vote of confidence in this project, I think, was a big part of how we were able to secure the bulk of our funding. So it's something I would recommend. Next slide, please. So we launched in August 18th of last year, 2021. For reference, the idea came about June of 2020. So it was like a year and change to actually get it from idea to being on the road. But we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, which we're very, very proud of. Next slide, please. So in terms of how it works, we have regular locations. We visit 11 locations throughout Brock Township. We go to about 6 locations a week, and then rotate. So to Pamela's point, it's a little bit different because we have a large area we're trying to cover, and being the transportation is a barrier, we're visiting a lot more locations. So, and just because we don't have the staff capacity to do more than that in a week, we do have it on a rotation. So this example on the left column here of what our schedules look like, and it's like rotation 1, rotation 2, and then repeats. Which is a little confusing, I would say, for our customers. It would be better, I think. Ideally, we would say we're here every Wednesday at this time, but like I say, it's just not feasible, and so it is kind of less than ideal, because I do think some customers get confused. With that said, we post it every week on our socials, every week on our website. We have a newsletter that goes out. Anyway, so we have our regular locations on 2 rotations. Should we have an emergency where someone needs a food bank order delivered, we will accommodate that upon request. It's something we're trying not to get too far into, because we do have a lot of clients, and it's a precedent that would be a bit tricky to set. But in extreme situations, we will do that. And then we always carry around emergency kits with us. So should we have someone visit the market and they're in immediate need of food, we can provide them with something to get them started, and then put them in touch with our food bank team to coordinate setting up a appointment. All of our profits are recycled back into the program. Not that there are any, to Pamela's point. We're basically trying to get to breaking even at this point. But yeah, that's like a whole other story. We do have a winter adaptation. So we do operate all year round. We do primarily source from local. We're able to offer storage crops in that time, because we also sell prepared meals and meal kits. It's not just storage crops that we're able to offer. We also have our kitchen team who does, like I mentioned, value-added products. Those include preserves. So throughout the season, when things are available, they'll turn them into preserves, and then we'll offer those preserves during the winter months. So we do think there's value to having the winter adaptation. We do have the capacity to do it, and so we do. We do reduce the number of locations that we're doing, unfortunately, because what we have available is not quite as much. So there's some towns where we go to multiple locations in that town, and we'll maybe reduce it to 1 or 2. And we do move indoors. So in the summer months, or like 3 seasons of the year, we're operating outside, but in the winter months, especially for our more vulnerable folks, it's just better for us to be working inside. That's obviously been challenging with COVID-19. There were some moments, some weeks last winter where we did have to operate outdoors, but we made it work. Next slide, please. So in terms of where we go, we are visiting subsidized housing units, seniors buildings, arenas or in fairground areas, churches, town halls. We've been attending local festivals and events and more. So, but primarily like the locations that are on our rotation are areas like this. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're a rural area. We've since had interest come from towns just outside of our area, out of our municipalities. So we've gone through the process of getting approval from those municipalities and public health units in order to serve those communities. Oh, I got this mixed up. Sorry. Go ahead, target audience. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. So this is just to show you on a map everywhere that we're visiting within this rural setting. And so yeah, it's all in all, I think we've calculated for our carbon offsetting that we drive about 350 kilometers a week, something like that, between doing our produce pickups as well. So it's quite a bit. Yeah, but sorry, next slide. So in terms of who our target audience is, primarily we're targeting low-income households, persons with disabilities, persons with social or employment barriers, seniors, but in addition to that, everyone. And I mention this because stigma is one of the bigger challenges that we have. Because we are a food bank, and because it's a small town, the assumption is that any service that we offer is only for folks in need. But in fact, for a number of reasons, we are working towards everyone having an understanding that they can access this program. Number one is that if everyone's accessing it, regardless of need, then the stigma around accessing the program is less. In addition to that, it helps us with profits. It helps us with kind of offsetting it if we're selling what we have and more folks are coming out. And so that's been honestly one of our biggest challenges. I find in a rural setting that, and maybe this is not even specific to rural, but word of mouth is the biggest. I mean, Pamela did speak to this, that word of mouth was how they grew. But word of mouth is the most powerful, and so, but it's the slowest. And so, especially in rural areas. So in terms of getting that word out that this is something that is for everybody, that's been one of our biggest challenges. Next slide, please. So in terms of where we're sourcing food, primarily doing it within like a 40-kilometer radius, 30-kilometer radius, which is awesome. We're getting most of it here in Cannington from a local organic farm, but we also get from a few farms nearby, which is wonderful. And they've been very generous with donating produce when they have access, which is lovely. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we have our meal kits. So these are all of the ingredients you need to make the dish. We provide the recipe. We have a YouTube video to follow along. And they're super family friendly. Those have been very successful. We offer meal kits. We offer prepared meals. So those are single servings. The menu changes each week as to what those single servings are. They're cooked. They just need to be reheated. It could be something like shepherd's pie or spaghetti bolognese or eggplant parm or whatever. It's basically whatever the kitchen has available to work with. And then in addition to that, we have our value added products. We offer salad dressings to try and encourage eating salads that are made in-house. We have in-house spice blends that we make, again, to encourage cooking with different veg, doing like pan roast or that kind of thing. Anyway, so we have our spice blends, and then, as I mentioned earlier, we have our preserves. And all of those items, the meal kits, prepared meals, and value-added products, all of those are made in-house. So those are, we're very grateful to have our kitchen team and our commercial kitchen that can facilitate that. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to make mention of our pricing model. So for our produce and our meal kits and our value-added products, we try and hit a price in between wholesale and retail. So basically, we take into account what the local retail price is. We take into account what our cost is from the wholesale price. We kind of average that out and get to where we are. For our meals, our prepared meals, we offer those by donation. Those are on a sliding scale, so we suggest anywhere from 0 to 5 per meal. It's a bit awkward, but our customers have kind of gotten used to it. And anyways, for a number of reasons, we have to offer it that way, but we do find that it works. Should we have folks show up and they're in need of food, as I mentioned earlier, we'll give them $10 of whatever they want from the market. In addition to that, we recently introduced our own currency. So in the US, they have SNAP. A sort of version of that we've done is our own currency called Market Bucks. So we give these to food bank clients, and they can come to market and access what they want. Again, they can choose, and there's a lot of dignity in being able to choose. But our general public and customers can purchase Market Bucks as gift cards, or they can sponsor Market Bucks, which is how we help offset some of that cost of providing that to food bank clients. In addition to some benefits that have come out of our, oh, hi, Rita.
We're almost out of time, so.
Okay, well, I will do this as the last slide then.
Okay, great.
Cool. All right, so additional benefits, we've developed new and existing community partnerships. We've been able to support local farms. Our kitchen can divert food waste, so any produce we have left over from the market, the kitchen can divert and put into something else. It's been huge for our organization to get awareness and for us to educate about other programs that we do, like women's services, social supports, the food bank, and more. I put this picture here to remind me to tell everyone, I also retrofitted our van with ice cream truck jingle. So, so that way people can hear us coming, and we do find that that's been effective and fun for people. So yeah, I have more information, but if folks have questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer.
Oh, that's so great. I love the jingle. That's a lovely note to end on. So so thank you so much, Zoe. That's wonderful to hear about I mean, what an incredible first year. And actually you answered, you know, one of the big questions, which is how does this get done in the first year? What's your advice to people? And Pamela, I'll thank you too for providing such a comprehensive explanation of your program. It's both programs are absolutely inspiring in terms of addressing food insecurity and such a clever response and way to work with the community. And so I'm just so grateful for the presentations that you've both given to us. I apologize so much. I keep on getting these go-to webinar, the server's on, the server's off. And so I think there's something happening with the go-to webinar server. So I do apologize so much, but I do have to say that Zoe and Pamela, even with not getting the full slideshow, you've both been able to articulate and explain your program so well that I think that I hope that our audience has learned learned a lot from this session. I know I have, and it's so inspiring to hear about how you are both serving the communities in need and the broader community as well. So with that, I just want to thank both of you, and thank you for our audience for joining us today and for putting up with the spotty with the spotty presentations. But yeah, I just really appreciate the presentations today, and thank you so much. And I wish everyone to have a wonderful day, and remember to eat your veggies today. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you.